Hey folks, and this is Taylor Elwood with the weekly broadcast of Magical Experiments. I've kind of decided at this point that I'm going to do a weekly broadcast on Thursday evenings. I don't know the exact time, but generally a live one about the topic of the week that I'm going to discuss and answer whatever questions you folks leave me with, either during the live video on um, or on the Facebook group. Um, and I did get a few questions this week about pop culture magic. So we're exploring how pop culture magic systems work. We're going to explore some other questions. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start out with pointing out that yes, I have written some books about pop culture magic. Woohoo! So go on to Amazon and check those out, or go to your favorite ebook thing and check those out. There's three of them, and they all tie into each other, but they are all distinct works. I mean, tonight we're going to be really talking more so about pop culture magic systems in some ways than the others, but they're all relevant to that kind of stuff. So let's explore let's see what questions I was asked first. Okay, so actually, we'll start out with ancient history for pop culture magic first. I was asked what were my first workings like, and what would I tell myself just starting out from today's perspective? Well, let's see here. Way back when, in the 1990s, is when I started doing pop culture magic, and I would say, for myself, that it was one of those cases where at the time I'd been practicing magic for a little while, and I started watching pop culture shows and things like that, like anime, and I thought, wow, there could be something to this, and I thought it was amazing. I really liked Dragon Ball Z way back when. I don't even watch the show now, but go figure. But back then, I was really into it, and I liked I thought it was an amazing show, and I thought, I wonder if any of these concepts and ideas could be turned into realistic practices. No, I still can't generate a Kamehameha ball or fly in the air or turn my hair golden or anything like that. But at the time, it really inspired my first forays into pop culture magic. And really, it was just a sense of wonder and a question of, can I actually take this and apply it to pop culture magic, or can I take this thing in pop culture and apply it to magic? But on the other hand, I would also say that my interest in pop culture magic was seeded even before that, because I was also reading this series of books called the Deathgate Cycles. And one of the things that I really liked about this fantasy series is that the authors really took the time to break down how their magical system worked and explain it. And I thought it was fascinating, and I started taking some of those ideas and applying it to magical work, and I found that it actually worked really well. They had appendices in the back of each book that explored the given system of magic or things like that, and it made sense to me, and it matched up with what I knew. What I would tell my younger self now is that I would basically tell him he's not alone, that there were other people out there even then practicing pop culture magic. They weren't necessarily out and about. They weren't out and about it. I mean, what I noticed in the 1990s is that when I first shared it, I was stuffily told by the person I looked up to at the time that pop culture magic wasn't real magic. Guess the joke's on him, because obviously that's not the case. But I that's what I tell myself, is that basically, it's real, it works, that it's worth exploring, and that at least initially you'd probably find a lot of stuff in chaos magic, but like in my case, I didn't even know about chaos magic when I first started doing pop culture magic. I started exploring pop culture magic before I got into chaos magic, and I only found out about chaos magic afterwards. So, I share that too, because back then, with pop culture magic, most people associate it with chaos magic, and I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, I think it's its own distinct thing. I've always treated it as its own distinct thing, and I would just point that out, that at least for me, that happened before I even discovered what pop culture magic was. That was me taking principles of ceremonial ritual magic and saying, well, surely this can be applied to pop culture, and it could. So that's what I tell myself, is that, you're not alone, and to keep exploring. I mean, that's really what I tell anyone now. Like, you're not alone if you choose to get into pop culture magic. It's a perfectly viable thing. And fortunately, now there's lots of people around who will validate that beyond myself. I mean, it's really exploded in the last few years. All right, so let's get into our next question here. I was asked who I would use from pop culture to do the following in either meditation or ritual: give thanks, respect, and gratitude to be your best and well and whole self, so that you can be who and what you are and reach your highest potential. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't like to give advice like that, and the reason why is because what is my pop culture may not be your pop culture. So what would work for me may not work for you. What I would do is I'd put it back on you, and I would ask you, like, what pop culture speaks to you in that way and inspires you to be your best person, that that inspires you to give thanks or to do things along those lines. I'll admit that's just not something I've ever really even approached. I mean, I'm just kind of focused on being my best self, and that's all there is to it. Each and every day I'm challenging myself in different ways, and I've never really looked toward a specific pop culture icon or things like that. But I mean, I think I think I guess I think there are plenty of people out there that a person can find inspiring, or pop culture or whatever else. I mean, use whatever you want, but again, I recommend that you choose that. You figure out what's relevant to you. And I always say that in regards to pop culture magic. I say that in regards to magic in general, because I find that a lot of times people encounter what I call prescriptive magic, where prescriptive magic is, I'm going to define what you can or can't do with magic. I mean, that's the majority of magical books out there in modern times, and it's been that way for a while. And I take a descriptive approach. I will tell you a descriptive way of what you could do with magic. I may give you some rules or things to think about, but ultimately I'm going to challenge you to find your own way. And I do that because I find that from my own experience, when people are told what to do, it really hampers their growth. It stops them from becoming effective magicians, and it stops them from cultivating that sense of wonder and imagination that's necessary. So again, going back to that question, not to not answer it, but really just because this is the way that I am. Who is it that speaks to you? That's who you want to work with, or what you want to work with when it comes to that pop culture magic. If there's a specific presence that speaks to you in your life that's a modern one, then go for it. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question here. And this was a question asked was, what do I say to the naysayers? And he's not talking just about the hardcore traditionalists, but rather those that are fairly experimental, yet whose critique is, yes, you can evoke Superman and things can happen, but if you want big mojo, you'd be far better by calling upon Apollo. Okay, well, here's what I say to the traditionalist. I'm great for you that you do what you do. I respect that, but I don't need to do what you do. It doesn't work for me. It never will. The way that I look at pop culture and what makes pop culture magic effective for some people versus others is it comes right down to relevance. What is relevant to you? For some people, being reconstructionist and trying to reconstruct how things were, that's what works for them. It doesn't work for me. I have no interest in trying to learn the ancient Greek language. I have no interest in trying to live a certain way like people did in the past. I have no interest in trying to do something that doesn't fit who I am. I live in this age and time. And it's no disrespect to those who live and want to be that way. I mean, hey, great. Kudos to you. I think it's awesome you have your place. But so do I. I have my place in all of this. And so do other pop culture magicians. For me, among other things, pop culture magic speaks to what is culturally relevant to me. It speaks to the exigencies, the exigencies, I should say, the problems of the time. And it speaks to things that are relevant to that. And so that's why I work with pop culture magic, among other things. I mean, I have different systems of magic that I work with. Pop culture magic is just one among many that I've developed over the years and that I work with. So for me, what makes pop culture magic really effective is the fact that it speaks to what culturally is relevant to me. And in regards to the critique from some people who are like, well, yeah, hey, I can work with Superman, but working with Apollo is more effective. Okay. Again, that's what works for you. I'm not going to tell you that it's right or wrong. You know, but I don't feel that I really need to go to Apollo for Big Mojo or for anything along those lines. And don't get me wrong, I do work with some classic spirits or entities. I mean, I'm doing a lot of work right now with archangels, for example, and I've worked with goetic demons in the past, and I've done work with other more traditional deities. But I'll tell you, I have not noticed a distinct difference in the effectiveness in terms of what I'm going for. I mean, I guess here's the real standard. Are you getting results? And are those results meaningfully changing your life? If you're getting results with Superman and they're meaningfully changing your life, and you're getting results with Apollo and they're meaningfully changing your life, then great. What's your metric of measurement to make one better than the other? You know, I don't even see why you need to. I mean, why do we need to have a pissing contest between Apollo and Superman or anything else along those lines? We don't. It's stupid and it's silly and it's kind of disrespectful to both entities in that regards. Maybe you find that Apollo works better for certain things and Superman works better for others, or maybe you just find that Apollo works better, period. Okay, then just work with Apollo, then don't work with Superman. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, it really just comes right down to what is going to get you results that stick, that meaningfully change your life. And if you can get results that stick and meaningfully change your life with pop culture, which many people can, myself included, then at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. It doesn't matter what's more effective or not. And I find the question of effectiveness to kind of be, to really speak more to the practitioner's personal practice more so than anything else. If a given practice isn't effective, then you need to look at, figure out why it isn't effective for you. What isn't working for you? Is part of it that you have trouble suspending your disbelief in working with Superman and believing that Superman could be a real spiritual entity? Own it. Recognize it. If that's the case, then don't work with Superman, because that's not going to be as effective for you. If, on the other hand, you're like me and you can wholeheartedly believe that pop culture spirits are powerful and real and that you can work with them in meaningful ways, then own that too and work it. What I find it really comes right down to is it comes down to what people are willing to believe, what they are willing to invest in. If I'm willing to invest my belief in pop culture spirits as real spirits that speak meaningfully to me, then that's what's going to work. And if I'm not, then it won't work. And really, that's the case with magic in general. Not to oversimplify it, but you know, belief does play a powerful role in magical work. I know some people get hung up on this idea of magic being all in your head, and they love the psychological model. I have no room for the psychological model in my magical practice, because the psychological model does not work. When it's all in your head, it has no real substance, no real meaning to it. You know, people can think about it and everything else, and it can be a useful tool for initially exploring magic and dipping your toes in without, you know, feeling the realness of magic. But that's just it. It's not real in the same way. It doesn't have the same depth, in my experience and in my opinion. And it kind of comes down to the same thing. I mean, does the magic meaningfully change your life? Yes or no? If it meaningfully changes your life, then that's what matters. So if I can do a full-blown pop culture magical working that meaningfully has an impact on my life, and I can work with Superman in a meaningful way that allows me to truly make changes in my life, that's what matters, not whether he's more powerful than Apollo or not. I don't care about how long Apollo's been worshipped versus Superman. I don't care about what, what's distinct about one or the other. I care about whether or not I get results. I care about whether or not it meaningfully impacts my life. And if it doesn't meaningfully impact my life, then why am I doing it? That's the hard question that we have to ask ourselves when it comes to our magical practice. And it's just something that people don't ask enough of. They just do what they do because, well, I'm just going to go through the motions. Well, don't go through the frickin' motions, please. Please don't go through the frickin' motions. Just do it. Make it real or give it up. But don't get caught up in what you think is more powerful or not. I mean, because when you bring that question into play, you're already sabotaging your magical work. You're sabotaging the effectiveness of it. And yes, I'm putting it back on you, whoever is you in this case. I'm putting it back on you. And the reason why I'm putting it back on you is because at the core, what makes magic work is you. If you're not fully invested in it, it doesn't matter who or what you work with. It won't work. You have to be 100% in if you want the spirits to work for you, whether pop culture or traditional. And that's why I don't see traditional as being better than pop culture. And when people get on their high horse and they're like, well, if it's traditional, it's better. If it's older, it's better, or any of that other silliness, I'm just like, no, it's not. You are what makes your magical practice effective. What you put into your magical practice is what makes it effective. And I know plenty of people who practice pop culture magic who have had life-changing experiences. So nobody gets to privilege their spiritual belief or practice over another. At least as far as I'm concerned. Your magical practice isn't better than mine, and mine isn't better than yours. And that's what I really wish people would kind of get into their heads when it comes to magical work in general. You want something to put into your head about magic? Put that into your head instead of getting all psychological. Commit. All right, next thing. Now I have this one's a couple of questions. Question is, can you create pop culture systems by combining different entities, or you recommend just doing this for one-off workings? I honestly would not recommend doing pop culture magic workings where you're taking different pop culture and smacking it together. Ironically enough, this is a complaint that people have from traditional perspectives when it comes to stuff where they'll be like, okay, well, why are you trying to put Kali together with Morrigan? They're from two different cultures. They're from two different backgrounds. And there are specific correspondences in place with them that may or may not even match up together. But here, we're going to try and smack them together and see what happens. I don't recommend doing it with traditional stuff. I don't recommend doing it with pop culture. And the reason why is because, again, your pop culture has something specifically relevant to it. It has its own background. You might say, well, what do you mean, Taylor? I mean, come on, it's all modern culture. Why can't we smack it together? But think about the world building that goes into a given form of pop culture, right? If I were to take, let's say, for example, I was to take Dahara, which was developed by Storm Constantine and I, pop culture magic system around Wraithu, and I was to smack it into, say, the stuff from the Deathgate cycle. There might be certain principles of magic that might apply, but just saying like, okay, I'm gonna have Agama work with Haplo, it just doesn't work. Okay, it just doesn't work. It's not a good thing. The only time I've done something even remotely along those lines is when I've done some space-time magic work, where I had Agama represent space, or Agama/Theti, and I had Prasan represent a Goetic demon represent time. And that worked because there really weren't any spirits that represented space from a traditional perspective. Like, there were lots of time spirits, but not spatial entities. So it actually worked pretty well. But even then, I was taking that out of the context of, I was taking that out of one context and putting it into another specific context that still fit. In the case of Agama Thede, one of the things that really fits is that he understands the realities and the aspects of space and how to manipulate space and how to play with space and do things with it. And that actually fits really well with space-time magic working. So it wasn't entirely out of context. There was relevant context there that made it work. But the key is that it comes down to relevance. So when people are doing pop culture magic work, and you want to just smack random things together, I don't recommend it unless you're going to really do a lot of research and you're going to figure out a way to make it all meld together. And even then, I mean, it comes down to something. It comes down to the correspondences that you build. So let's talk for a moment about correspondences, because I find a lot of people don't understand them. I used to not understand them either, by the way. I used to hate correspondences, and I hate correspondence tables in books. If you haven't gotten that from a couple of videos I've put out there, I do. I genuinely hate them with a passion. And the reason I hate them with a passion is because, in my opinion, to discover a correspondence, you need to develop that correspondence through the experience that you have with the spirits. You need to learn those spirits. You need to allow them to come into your life and let them speak to you in whatever way they're going to. And when you're using correspondences that someone else has developed, they may be relevant, but the problem with them is that they aren't things that you've developed yourself. So it becomes suspect to some degree, because it's like you're being lazy in a way. Now, if you're really doing the work, you'll get past that phase and you'll really do the work and you'll discover for yourself whether or not those correspondences match. But it's the same thing with pop culture. If we're going to develop a pop culture magic system, we need to spend the time actually understanding that pop culture, doing the research. And now if you start smacking stuff together from another pop culture, it just confuses the issue. It makes it muddy. And so in my mind, it's just not an effective way to approach it. Now, hey, if you want to go out there and try it, then by all means, feel free to do so and share what you discover. I mean, I'll be the first to say, take anything I say with a grain of salt and do what works for you. And the reason I always say that is because at the end of the day, I remember what it was like when someone told me a long, long time ago, what you're doing isn't magic. Again, that was I told that story earlier in this video. I remember how disheartened I felt when I heard that. And I will never tell people that per se. I mean, I'll offer you my opinion and you may not like my opinion, and that's fine. If you ask for it though, that's what you will get. So just keep that in mind. But I will also be the first to say that's my 2 cents. Take it with a grain of salt and do what you want to do. Do what you want to do and find out for yourself, because at the end of the day, you are the best qualified expert to know what works for you or what doesn't work for you. Not me. Yes, I've written some books on pop culture magic and on magic in general. That doesn't mean that I'm automatically the authority in your life. I shouldn't be anyway. I mean, you should question anything that I offer and ask yourself, how does what Taylor share fit or not fit into what I'm doing? So if there are those of you out there who are like, well, I really want to find out for myself if I can put multiple pop culture together to create a magical system, then by all means, go ahead and do it. I don't recommend it. I don't think it'll work, but I could be wrong. And it's not even about proving me wrong. It's about discovering for yourself what works. So I want to be very clear about that. I mean, because at the end of the day, again, this kind of comes down to an important principle of magic. If I feel like something will not work for me, it doesn't matter if you go and you say, well, Taylor, I did it and it worked. I mean, that's great. It worked for you. Doesn't mean it'll work for me. And this is something, again, people don't understand about magic. What we bring in, our own biases, everything else does play a role in what makes magic work or not work. Think about that. Like, really think about that and consider it, because that's an important thing that people don't pay attention to in magical work. And it's why a lot of times people sabotage themselves, because they try to do something that doesn't work for them. And I know that makes magic very personalized in some ways, and I know people don't like that. It makes it kind of like, ooh, what do you mean magic can be that personalized? But yeah, magic really is that personalized. It's a deep, dark secret that many people don't want to admit to, but it really does come right down to it. Yes, you can read from a book, you can learn practices, you can do all that other stuff. At the end of the day, if you're doing magic right, you're going to develop your own personalized practice, and that practice is going to speak to you in ways that it won't to other people. And, that's why I always say in my books, here's what I'm doing. Take from it what you will and make it your own thing. Because it's not about replicating what Taylor Elwood has done, right? It's about figuring out your own thing. Don't be like some of those people out there who try to be like Crowley. Oh, I did what Crowley did. Okay, Crowley's dead and gone. He's not even relevant that much anymore, other than to a specific cult of magical practitioners. And the fact of the magic is, yes, you heard that. The fact of the magic is, at the end of the day, who cares? Figure it out for yourself. Don't do what Crowley did. Read his stuff, learn from him, and same for everyone else. Learn from them and then make it your own. That's what makes magic effective. Okay, let's see. I got one last question here, and then I got to get ready for my next video for my magical success class. So what do I think about using celebrities or gurus for pop culture magic, like Zig Ziglar for more sales? My own perspective on it is I have no problem with it. I mean, if that's what you want to do, I mean, if you've read my book, Pop Culture Magic, in Pop Culture Magic, one of the things I do talk about is working with celebrities, and we're really working. I make a very important distinction, which is that, there's a difference between the celebrity persona and the actual person. I do have a pet theory about why celebrities are so crazy, and I think it's because of the amount of energy that people put toward them. I mean, if you think about attention as a form of energy, of worship, devotion, and not necessarily real worship and devotion, but I mean, people paying attention to something. Imagine all that coming into a person. Do you think they can really handle it? I don't think they can. So I think it's worth noting that. But I mean, that's, again, my own pet theory. But getting back to the whole pop culture thing, could you work with Zig Ziglar? Well, why not? I mean, yeah, you could work with Zig Ziglar as a way to help you become a better salesperson. I'd also recommend reading his books, but you might find that, having the voice of Zig Ziglar in your ears will actually, like when you're in a sale, might help you, might tip the scale in your favors. Maybe he'll tell you to do something that you wouldn't have thought to do otherwise. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with working with a celebrity. Some people do. I have seen, like, in the pop culture magic forums on occasion, some people get really weird about that, and they don't like it. They don't think it's ethical or whatever. But again, I don't have a problem with it. I think it works, and if it works, use it. Do what works for you. And again, if that doesn't work for you, then don't do it. Recognize what doesn't work for you. If you recognize what doesn't work for you, then don't do it. It's so freaking simple, and yet so many people miss out on that. I know I brought it up, but it just honestly amazes me how many times the one thing that people don't get about why their magic isn't working is that it really comes right down to them. If it's not working, there's probably some part of you that isn't fully in alignment with it. I'm not saying there aren't other factors, because sometimes there are, but 9 times out of 10, why magic isn't working for you? It's you. You. And if you figure that out, you will change your approach. So if you want to work with celebrities, getting back to the question, then go for it. I mean, I've done some work on occasion with both dead and live celebrities, so to speak. I mean, think about Elvis. People work with Elvis all the time, okay? Elvis has been dead and gone. I mean, even Aleister Crowley. Yes, I used him as an example earlier, but some people still believe in him. He's a pop culture entity for some people, right? They may not look at it in that way, but I mean, really, that, he has his own pop culture bearing. He was on a Beatles album, for heaven's sake. So the point is like, if you want to work with a celebrity, then work with a celebrity. And if you don't, you don't. So look, it's time for me to end this. I got to get ready for my next video. But for the Magical Success class, which if you're not part of, like look out for it this coming week, because I'm going to be adverting it again. And otherwise, take care and have a great, awesome week.